Thank you so much, everyone, for your time. My name is Wale Adeyipo, as I've been introduced. I was surprised to see that picture. I don't know when I took it, so I was asking who gave Bumi that picture to use. It's indeed an honor to be here again this year. I was here 2 years ago. And I think it's amazing that when I saw the list of topics that they've done justice to in the last two days. And I think I'm fortunate to have the topic that have been given to me also. It's another intriguing and what I call a life-saving conversation. I play both sides when it comes to sales engagement. I come from the academic area, which I think I have an extensive experience and track record when it comes to the academic area. When I say this sometimes, somebody told me, he said, you know, you're actually bragging on the stage when you spoke the last time. And I said, as a salesman, there's some level of bragging that comes with the job. So because of my extensive need for knowledge, and in the last 4 years, I think I added, it was MIT, I added to my list of schools that I'm currently an alumnus of. From business school, Netherlands, to London Business School, to MIT in Boston, and I'm presently at Harvard. Starting my PhD also sometimes in September, but I'm a salesman. And that's because I understand the dynamics of sales from the heart of sales and the science of sales. A lot of us got into sales because that medicine didn't work. I mean, how many people, when they requested then what you wanted to be growing up, how many people actually said sales? It was the second option for most of us, really. So when you get to the real practice of sales also, we always look for the shortcuts because we got there also by accident, not necessarily that that's our calling. I wanted to be a scientist, but I did jam 3 times and my cutoff mark wasn't up to 200. So I had to take a different position. A very big thank you to the organizers also of the program. I always say when I see a man that is hardworking, I say well done to them. When I see a man that is very diligent, I also say well done to them. The same way when I see a man with great talent, I always say well done to them. When I see a man that's so consistent, I fear them. I fear them because that's probably one of the most difficult things to do in the universe. And I'm sure you could tell going by the number of times you've registered for a gym and you did not go. Later you said it's because it's far from your house, then you register for the one close to your office. But you are still here today, you've not lost. It's very difficult to be consistent. I've known Mr. Jimbala for years now, and I can say the gentleman has been very consistent. Thank you so much for all you do. I really have a lot of regard for you, and I'm sure you know. I've been given less than 30 minutes to discuss with you with a topic that I consider very dear to me. And like I said, it's the life that I live every day. I wish I had an option, but I think it's too late at this point. So I have to live with what I've been served. However, I think there's absolutely no way I can do justice to this without first explaining what I believe to be the fundamental of almost every other thing. Everything I'm going to tell you here today, if you take your time to research, you will find it. What you will not be able to find is my own personal story. So I decided to tell a little bit of my story as I was planning for this event 3 days ago. I had 4 different ways that I think I approached this conversation in 30 minutes, and I'll make sense to you. But I felt the storytelling sometimes goes a very long way. You might not remember every other thing, but 2 years to this time, when you see me, you will remember the story. So that is what I'm going to do for the first 7 to 8 minutes. Then I will land within the next 10 to 12 minutes. Mid-year 2020, last year, 2 months into the pandemic, I suffered what you could call a mental distress. Am I controlling this? I suffer what you could call a mental distress, where there was absolutely no clarity on what precisely I want to do. Of course, prior to that time, 2018 and 2019, the organization that I work for, we've done a lot of investments, some heavy investment into some basic solutions and platform, and we've considered 2020 to be the year that will kill it all. So 2018 was the time for planting, 2019 was the time for planting. Then fast forward to 2020, you had a pandemic, and I needed to choose what exactly I need to do. You know that place in the movie where the fighter have to sleep on their sword because the warrior can die. So I had the option to actually put my sword in there and rest on it, so I would die standing. But it was a serious mental distress for me because I really didn't know what to do. And every conventional knowledge about everything that I think I know about sales at that point in time was threatened. For no fault of ours, for absolutely nothing that I've done wrong or that you have done wrong. The world we are used to suddenly changed. Every other thing we know about how the world is being should run suddenly changed. And I don't need to explain that to you because I'm sure you had a fair share of that also. Everything you could think of, the economic outlook was a real threat. We saw the crisis, what you could call the stock market crisis in the US that led to the spike of most US stock, which was beyond the conventional, traditional way of what you will consider to be the appreciation of the economy. Because how do you explain a situation where unemployment is so bad, economy is dying, but at the same time also the stock market is going at some kind of exponential rates that we could understand. In our everyday life also, we could see the changes when it comes to consumer behavior and how consumer behavior started shaping almost every other thing that we do. If you find yourself in the retail market, then you suddenly understand how almost everything that you do, especially for FMCGs, have few friends in there. And they all came back to me to say what exactly are they going to do at this point because nothing was really making sense. There was no better time to rethink every other thing that we've acquired before that time than in 2020. There was no better time to find a different approach to revenue growth and of course to revenue performance than in 2020. And that was the situation I found myself May 2020. I was talking to a friend and he said, even without the pandemic itself, we consume more information today than we did 10 years ago. So that means we're consuming 5 times more information today than we did 10 years ago. I have a friend that is into advertisement and he said, before a product or any advert can make an impression on anyone, you must have had impression with it like 120 times. So that means if you're selling the beautiful cap your hand on, sir, that thing must have had impression on me 120 times before I can see it again, and it suddenly has made an impression on me. And that's just to buttress the fact that how we consume information today, whether consciously or unconsciously, before we can make sense of any other thing. So my point in all this is, how do you have all this and you still think you can approach sales, you can approach growth, you can approach revenue generation the same way? That was the same problem I found myself. How do I have all these things that I've said and I still want to apply the knowledge that I acquired in 2025 that gave me over $70 million revenue in 1 year, in 2013 that gave me over $120 million revenue in 1 year. I wanted to apply the same method in 2020, and suddenly I realized it wasn't going to be possible. Of course, I spoke to, in the course of me looking for answers, I spoke to one of my MIT professors, a lady called Tawa Stunt. Apparently, before that time, I went into something called neuroscience and management. Tara is a PhD holder when it comes to, she's a medical doctor, but she focused more on organization and the power of the brain. Meaning, why do some leaders, why are they successful and some leaders are not successful? So that means leader A and leader B, they are kept in the same economy, they are given the same resources, they have almost everything. So why will leader A be successful, but leader B will struggle in the same, given the same circumstances and the same assets? So Tara went to the details to understand what's the place of the brain, how does the brain function? And that was the only thing. It's a very comprehensive survey that I can give to the organizers of this program to give to you. So of course I spoke to Tara to understand what are the few options that I have at this point before I sleep on my sword. And she went into details to explain to me what exactly I need to do. And the first thing she told me was to brought out an image of the brain. Time will not permit me to get into that, the details. But she explained to me that our brain is actually divided into two sections. We have the left brain that is used for processing, and we have the right brain that is used for creative thinking. The section of the brain that is used for creative thinking, she explained that it requires more processing power. Just the same way you understand processing power. So the part that you will use for creative thinking requires more processing power. And it's not the same brain that we use for our everyday activity. So if you drive yourself to this place today, you don't need the creative part of your brain to get here. Because that is just the norm. If you're going to your house right now, you don't need the creative part of the brain to get here. So oftentimes we use the creative part of our brain, less than 5% do we engage that part of our brain. And that's why you have less people doing great and creative things in the world, because it's the very expensive part of the brain. So she explained all that to me. She also explained what the book she's writing right now, which she titled A Detailed Evaluation of 2020. So she's going to release the book in 2025, but what she's doing right now is she's getting into the details that 3 things will happen in 2025: organizations that die, organizations that survived, organizations that thrived, and organizations that will be here for generations to come. And that is going to be decided in 2020. And she's trying to draw a pattern, not so much about the employees or the economy where you operate, but she's trying to draw a pattern in terms of the leadership of those organizations and what decision are they taking today. Of course, she said a whole lot of things on how the brain functions and all the rest. It was a 3-hour session for me. The not too good news from what she said is that our brain is already programmed to regard change as a threat. And that's why I said this wasn't the clothes that I wore when I came here today. That was the first thing she told me, that my brain, her brain, your brain as a program in any way, if you move away from anything that is your routine, if you move away from anything that happens to be what you're used to, you think you're making a change. What the brain is seeing is the brain is seeing a threat. So that's why it's difficult for the man that smokes to stop smoking. Not so much that the desire is not there to smoke, but if if the guy did not, or the lady did not smoke in 2-3 days, the brain is sending the feedback immediately to say, this is a threat, to say red zone, red zone, red zone. So when I got here, I was speaking to my here to say, am I supposed to dress? Can I wear my jeans? And she said, no, we don't know, so it's better you go on your suit. And I said, but can I go without my tie? And she said, yes, you can go without your tie. So when I got here, I felt it was okay, I can come without my tie. But 10 minutes into it, I was uncomfortable, and she asked me, what's the problem? That you don't seem to... I said, no, I can't figure it out what the problem was. 5 minutes again, I said, okay, let me step out. I don't know what it is, but let me step out. Later, I realized there was no problem. The problem was because I was not with my tie. So I can count the number of times I actually had to wear my full suit without my tie. If I'm counting that, it can't be more than 4 times. When I don't wear my tie, then I wear my jean. But I can wear a jacket, then I wear a shirt. But if I wear it like this, then I have to put on my tie. I couldn't figure it out. But my point is the brain was sending signal to me immediately to say threat, red zone. It took a while before I said, tell the driver to bring my tie. I got back into my tie, then I was myself. Nothing has changed about the environment. Nothing has changed about the people that I'm dealing with. I'm telling you, that is precisely how your brain functions, and that is how you make everyday critical decisions about your life, your family, your business, your marriage, and every other thing you do. And sometimes you think it's your village people. Oftentimes it's not so much of your village people, but how your brain is wired. So I had a 7-hour session with Tara after then, and she was explaining to me how my brain will respond to different things. So the panic attack I had May last year wasn't so much about the pandemic. It was more about the fact that I'm applying everything I know about sales up to that time to that situation, and I wasn't getting any feedback that this was going anywhere. So the threat I was getting is I was moving away from my comfort area by trying to do something different, which is what I've been rewarded for over the years. So trying to do something different this time around, I was moving away from that comfort zone, and my brain was telling me immediately to say, you are moving away to a very dead zone that you should not play in. And that's why the guy will stop smoking after 3 months, but he will come back to that smoking position because he needs to come back to a comfort position. Nothing has changed about me. The only thing that has suddenly changed now is that I'm back to my tie because this is how I know myself. It's the same way, and it's the same thing you're dealing with. And I'm still coming back to the fact, why do some organizations, why do some leaders perform very well and some leaders don't perform very well? Another quick question I'll throw at you is, how many of you today, I believe we all have a laptop run on Windows OS on our laptop. Just by show of hand, I will appreciate that. You run on Windows OS, yeah. So how many people also run on Windows 03 today? Windows 03 OS, maybe few. Okay, Windows 07. How many of you run on Windows 07? So that was pretty much how Tara was concluding our conversation to me to say, Wale, if you won't run on Windows 03 and your iPhone updates 2 a.m. every morning, why will you want to use the information you acquired in 2015 to apply to situations of your life today? It got nothing to do whether it's sales or whatever it is. So even if your device will not run on 03 and 07, why are you using situations that you think has worked before? 03 worked when it worked. There must be a reason why they have to upgrade it. There must be a reason why you have to do all those firmware upgrades on your phone, and you have to upgrade. So it's the same thing she was trying to explain to me, to say, no, you need to rethink and find a different way to go about this. 3 words she said: adaptability, creative thinking, team empowerment should be my focus at that time. She ended with this story, and that's why I'm going to stop, and I'll jump into the conversation of today. She told me about this very terrible fire that broke out, I think somewhere in Chicago or San Francisco, where we had over 24 firefighters lost their lives to that fire. It was a big news in the media at that point. But the story is not so much about the firefighter. The story she was getting to was more around the fact that this firefighter has actually died with a backpack right at their back when they finally found them. I mean, they were burnt to a way you can't recognize. But all of them, they all had their backpack on. They had their shovels on, and they had all the tools on when they died. Between the place where the fire occurred and where they finally died was almost more than 300 meters to 450 meters. So the point is, like, they ran from the place of the fire, they ran for over 400 to 500 meters, but they still had their backpack on, they had their shovels on, they have their tools on. A conversation with this is, Wale, you are, one way or the other, you've identified with something that had worked for you. So in the firefighting industry or in company, dropping your tool will require you to lose your sense of identity. Dropping your tools will require you to unlearn a particular habit. Because a firefighter is not a firefighter. It's just like me and you. The only thing that makes him a firefighter are those things they had on. And that has been his identity. That's the only reason why he's a firefighter. So there must be that level of consciousness for him to unzip or to unplug what he had on, because that is all he has identified with all of his life. Firefighters are known with their tools. Without their tools, they are nothing. So your sense of what, in every way, the gentleman from mutual insurance, your sense of what, whatever it is you work today, has been based on some assumptions that you've had over the years and what you can consider to be your identity. And it's extremely difficult if you want to divorce yourself from that. My closing comment on this is, you're applying old knowledge. and ways of doing business in a new business terrain. So everything you have known up to this now should be questioned. Another quick check. I'm sure a lot of organizations know a company called Amazon, you know a company called Apple, you know a company called Facebook. Please, do we have people in here that you know any organization called Segway, Pet.com, or Palm? Do you know any organization called Pet.com, Segway, or Palm? Pet.com, Segway, or Palm? These organizations, together with Amazon, Apple, and Facebook, started at the same time. They had the same, in fact, Pet.com and I think Amazon got the same funding from the same person, from the same private venture capitalist, almost at the same time. They operated almost from the same economy. They operated almost within the same geography. But fast forward 5 years to that time, Pet.com, Palms, and Segway were not there again. And a comprehensive review was also done to find out why. It wasn't so much about the economy. It wasn't so much about the people. It wasn't so much about the employee. It was more about the leadership of both organizations and the ability for one to be able to adopt, the ability for one to be able to drop the old style of doing business because they're in a new terrain and they're able to function in that new terrain. My news to you today, my good friends, is the fact that it's a new terrain and you have to apply a new terrain in a different way. I'm still putting together the many things that I've said as regards how do I approach it going forward. My identity in the last 15 years is what I've applied last year that it didn't work. So I'm searching for new ways, and every day I'm testing those new ways to see how I can move forward on that. I'm working in progress on this, but I can assure you I've made some good progress between last time and now. What are these approach to effective revenue performance management? My assumption in all this is a lot has been said in this other sessions, so I will not get into the details of lead generation. So I'm jumping immediately to the fact that yes, some level of revenue has been created. If you don't mind also, do you have people that work for themselves in here? Like you run your own organization. It will help me with my illustration. By show of hand, do we have people that work for themselves? Okay. Then the assumption is like the others, you work for an organization today. Am I correct with that? Okay, that's good then. So I said effective revenue performance management, and I said one of the first things is to find the right talent. And when we're talking about the right talent, I don't necessarily mean the most skillful guy you could find in that field, because that's what we've seen also right now. One of the most difficult things you could find in Nigeria today is finding the right talent. It's unbelievable if I get into the details of this. But suddenly now I'm realizing that right talent doesn't necessarily mean the guy is skillful or is the best salesman. I have a friend, just like you, sir, that had to set up his own organization. He was coming from one of the big fours, the big consulting firm. After like 20 years, then he started to run his own thing. And he was looking for the right talent. So, of course, he got these two lovely guys. And 6 months into it, they both left. And he called me to say he's in a big problem because he can't seem to keep the good hands. So I told him, that was the first time I went to his office. And I saw the profile of the guy he hired, and I said, this guy should be able to do the job. But suddenly I realized what the problem was. Very good guy that has worked in big organizations suddenly is in a startup, which shouldn't be a problem. Right talent sometimes might mean that it's the right fit for your organization, not so much about the skill set. So this gentleman will send his work to the printer, and he will go there expecting that the paper is waiting for him to pick it up. But the printer in my friend's office will require for you to shake and that gentleman seems to have a lot of experience in before I got there, he was already laughing. So it will require you to hit 2 times and the paper will come out. In fact, one will come out, then you hit another 3 times, then the second one will come out. But they didn't have a problem with it. You get fantastic talent, but it's not the right fit for that organization. So there's a struggle. We're looking for the head of one of our subsidiaries in East Africa sometime. And I had to call out to a friend. I had over 20 years experience working with almost every organization you could think about in the world. It was probably one of the worst decisions I've ever taken because it was a waste of our time, both my time and his own time. Why? Because between 9 to 12 o'clock, the gentleman is used to sipping coffee and smoking cigarettes because that is what he has done in Dubai, that is what he has done in Qatar, working with these multinationals. My kind of work required that if I need to put off my sleeve and do the thing myself, I do it. And you know, for sales, most of you know that for sales, we are not too put together like that. This is the best of how you can see us, if you understand what I'm trying to say. We can try to code it and all the rest, but when you've calculated your commission and you spend the money before you receive it, then I said the man is not around, that he went to Imo. How far is Imo from Lagos? But he's coming from a place where he just sent a mail to say, I'm so sorry, the gentleman went to Imo. So it really didn't work. He's a perfect guy, but it wasn't a perfect fit for what I wanted. So when we're talking about the right talent, you must be sure what stage do you have your organization at this point. And even when you're talking about, even if you're not employing, but you have a team that you're working with, you must be able to tell who does what within your organization based on the fitness of these individuals to the work that you have for them to do. Of course, I said the right processes must also be in place. Because also we don't do the science of sales, we always believe in the end product. I mean, if you go to, and that's the problem with what we call the knowledge world and what you can regard as the manufacturing world, or the non-knowledge world, and I'll explain that in very few seconds. So in the non-knowledge world, for example, manufacturing, I worked at Nestle for some time, and I was working in Maggi production. It's difficult for us to have a very bad end product. You know why? Because there are steps for everything. There's a step where you have to put in a pallet, where you have to load the material. My point is, when you get to step 4 and there's a problem, you can always stop the machine, then you fix the problem, then you go on again. So very likely you don't have a very terrible end product. In the knowledge world of the sales where we work, the processes are not being followed. So the only thing that shows that a good work has been done is when that purchase order comes to you at the end of the month. And if it doesn't come, there was no knowledge that tells that it was at stage 4 that we had a problem. So you will go through this thing again 7 times and you come back to say, we didn't get a order, which will not happen at Nestle, because you can clearly tell that we're having that much trouble at stage 2. It's difficult for you to be very tangible when it comes to the knowledge world. So very clear KPIs must be set within the organization. I don't think I need to say so much about that. Fit for purpose, I think I've said that for technology. I think the negative part of social media is also affecting us when it comes to sales. So a lot of us will get into what we think we need, which is being driven by the perception and the unconsciousness of what we consumed on social media. So I always tell my friends to say, my definition of innovation is not far-fetched. So in the next 10 years, what we are building in CWG, we are not bringing the world to you. If you want to see the world, you will enter plane, you will go to where the world is. We are solving basic problems today that's affecting very peculiar issues that's affecting our everyday life in sub-Saharan Africa. It got nothing to do with going to the moon. Because I won't be pressured to say, oh, this is what they're doing. That is not, if money is the problem at the end of the day that I want to get, then there is money in the everyday troubles that myself and you face. So you need to clearly define that also to say, what's the right technology for your organization? It doesn't have to be anything out of this world, both for internal use and for external use. If you are in the software development part of things, or if you are creating new products, you can't be pressured by the society on this is what is going to be the next thing. Let me see the time, madam. Is somebody showing me the time? I need to know. I have a tendency of going beyond my time. Chief, you can find out for me, please. I need to be told how much time that I have. So that is very important on how you go about that. And I said at the end of the day, there must be what you call the data point in your organization. The data point will be what will create some level of value creation, price strategy, market target market, and consumer satisfaction. I said I'm going to tell a lot of story because I'm sure you remember my story. We used to have a help desk executive in my organization some years back. That's what we call the receptionist in this part of the world. So, I mean, smart lady, if you see her, you could tell that she's smart and every other thing. Nobody told her, but this lady started sending weekly reports. Our organization used to be called Computer Warehouse Group. But because we got people calling us and saying, I want to buy a laptop, do you have 1 million copy of laptop? And we were not selling laptops, so we had to change the name. So it's just CWG, we are not Computer Warehouse. And when we say CWG, we don't expect you to ask us, what's the meaning? The same way you don't ask PwC, what's the meaning, or IBM. When we tell you CWG, just take it and don't ask for the definition. So this lady will send reports every week, and she brought out something very intelligent. She had to show us how many people had to come in a week, whether to price for anything or to make inquiry or to see a visitor. And she drew a pattern that actually showed the number of people that will come in a week, the number of ladies we have, the number of guys that we have. Of course, we have 92% male, 8% female. But in the usual way, you know, guys are usually the very broke one. 70% of the revenue was actually coming from 8% of the female that were working from the organization, 8%. But 70% of the revenue were coming from them, from working customers. Okay. But we didn't know that, and we didn't send her to do that information. Of course, when she brought out the revenue that those 8%, it was substantial enough for us to make some basic changes in the organization. How do we make the what's that place you stay before you go into the work? Is it the reception? Yes. How do you make the reception more conducive and make it more female friendly? Because we have relevant data now that can support the fact that the real people paying our salary in this organization are not those men that are coming to speak quiz English. They are these ladies, 8% of them. So changes were made just to attract more of that. As at that time also, we stopped selling laptops. Okay, because we're into enterprise sales and we felt it was taking us back. But we had to go back into the sales of retail accessories and laptop strictly because a good percentage of these ladies that come in are either coming to fix their Mac, fix their very expensive laptop, or they want to do a buyback or whatever it is. And it became a substantial part of our business 6 months, 8 months to that time. My story in all this is like, it just, that information and that's what you could call value creation came just because somebody decided to look for that data point. So you must be able to find those data points in your organization. And it could be anything. It could just be you speaking to a customer. Yeah. But because we also don't practice the science of sales, is anything to the answer. That's what we do. But when you start to find it, then you realize how many data points you actually have. And it really doesn't matter if you only have 10 people telling you that. It doesn't really matter. You don't necessarily have to have 100 people saying that to you. But when you have 10 from this point and you have 3 points from this point, you could find the common thing that they are all saying that can lead to the sales, to changes that you probably need to make. And it might even be even in your price strategy. So if there's something I do very well right now is I listen. You have to tell me to talk before I talk because I'm waiting to get something from you, which I'll write down immediately. And I'll compare that to the information that I've received before this time. So, of course, I've mentioned about the right talent and what of you. I've mentioned about the data insights, and I said this must be used in a very intelligent way that can improve your bottom line, as that remains the main focus for any organization. I spoke also about the science of management, performance, and growth. This is also one very important and critical element of the conversation. And I think a lot of organizations today are doing this, but it must be in a very measurable way where you can tell whether you're doing well or you're not. How do you generate leads today in your organization? Is there a very processed way for lead generation? And do you have that broken down into different hierarchy on the size of the deal, the qualification of the deal, and who does what at what time? So if the deal is just a $5,000 or a $20,000, is there a very clear pattern that is the Bible of the organization that a 6-month sales intel in your organization clearly understand this process. I agree that we have it somewhere in our head, recorded somewhere. But I'm saying the science of sales is becoming more intelligent right now, that there must be some level of consciousness within the organization before that can sink in. And that was why I made the first illustration about my friend in branding, that I said, a product must made almost 120, we must have had 120 impression on you before you can even have some kind of connection with that product. And it could be anything. You got to the airport, you saw it. You were not looking for it, but you saw it at the airport. You got into the taxi, you saw it. You got back on the road, there's traffic, you saw a billboard. As you're trying to buy gala, you saw the guy wearing the thing, 120 of it before you can even think, yes, there is this sausage that is called Bam Bam. You get. So it's the same thing when it comes to the science of sales and when you are building that culture within the organization. You get. So not so much about what is in our head, but more about what have we documented that we can consider to be very critical in the organization for everybody to know. So lead generation and how you capture that becomes very, very essential. How do you benchmark that with industry standard? At what point do you tell whether you're doing well or you are not doing well? How do you analyze the same thing? How do you drive such insights through some level of tools analysis, data analysis? And I'm not saying go and buy the best tools in this world. I just give an example of the lady at the help desk. We did not buy anything. The lady was the one that came herself and went to sort out this. So these are very critical things that must be considered in an organization when you are looking at revenue focus within the organization. Of course, also we have the concept of revenue governance and revenue assurance. I think one of the most important things about revenue generation is you must also focus on revenue insurance, because there's no beauty in 2020 was good, but in 2021 there was nothing. So for you to create that level of revenue assurance, then you must move beyond revenue generation and get into revenue assurance. And I say culture plays a very important role when it comes to revenue assurance, because no matter what you do, if you've not built that culture within the organization, people will be looking for quick fix. So that means I'm good this quarter and I will be good next quarter, but it's not so much about every quarter to you as a leader or as a team lead or as the owner of the organization. They must be able to sustain that. So process improvement might help in that. Internal control and compliance might also help in that. And of course, continuous alignment with your marketing, between your marketing team and your sales team, also play a very important role in that space. The use of technology, I'm sure you must have discussed that several times in the course of the many conversations you've had here today. SMART goals, I said performance management indices, you must be able to have some level of customer satisfaction and customer success, and create customer lifetime value. So for every sales organization, you must know the 3-4 customers that nothing can go wrong with them. And you are deliberately creating that customer lifetime value. There are customers today that their phone number is on my speed dial. So if they call me, right now, I will plead with you that let's do this thing tomorrow. I can afford to come. I would rather come to your homes to carry you and bring you here than leave them hanging. But I will surely apologize to you. My point in this is that you must have those customers that you can consider to be lifesaver. I won't get into the details of data capturing, but I've not said anything to you today if you don't leave this place understanding why data capturing will save your life. I didn't know this also until 2017 when I started moving into real data intelligence to make business decisions in my organization. It was in 2017 I realized that the business we've done for over 10 years was not actually the most efficient one that we should have been getting into. And it came clearly from data also. Just the same way of the analysis of the male and the female that I gave, we realized there's a particular business that is only 17%, but it's giving profit line of well over 50%. And we don't even have a senior manager managing that product. We don't have it. But it came clearly when we went into the details to find out the P&L of every product, the P&L of every department. Not so much about a centralized activity-based accounting because the CFO is the CFO. No, what percentage of the CFO's time is being spent on this particular product and what is being spent on this particular product. And immediately we saw that switch. It was a clear strategy for us on what to do going forward. So you must have a point where you are nesting data within your organization and find as many touch points. I said it's beyond a buzzword. A lot of people think data intelligence is all about buzzword when it comes to revenue growth or revenue generation. I call it the pathway, and that's why I use today. I'll spend more money getting a data analyst, and I'll sit with that. I don't read sales report again on weekends. I don't. I will tell you if it's more than 2-3 slides, don't bother to send it to me. Shoki, what exactly happened? Leave the story. Yeah, because I've been there before and I know from first page to like the 7th page of the slide, it's a lie. It did not, you didn't go there. So if more than 3 pages, but I'll spend more money with the data analyst because the lady is showing me the trend to say this lady that came 10 months ago, this is our level of productivity. Do you have staff productivity, employee productivity? So that means you clearly understand how much is everybody bringing at the end of the day. And that will actually tell the efficiency or the inefficiency in your organization. So fast forward roll back in 2017 when I became the CEO of my organization. It was unfortunate, but that was the decision I had to take, where over 65% of the people I met in the organization had to leave. Not because they are not my friends, but there was so much inefficiency in the organization. I didn't get that by looking at their face. It was clearly what the data showed to me to say, this person has been there for 14 years. The total investment on this person is 4.2 million. Revenue they've sustained before that time is 3.1. Profit line, $32,000. It's a waste of everyone's time. You know the good thing? They're all doing very well where they are right now. So sometimes we care so much about not hurting people's feeling, but what we're doing is like we're also holding them down for the great things they should be doing outside in there. The point in all this is like get into data intelligence and you see how much of that can help you in terms of how you can understand customer needs, how you can provide customers with the ability to create some unique personalized experience and what have you, and of course predict the future. I spoke about the small units that I said was producing so much in my organization. Our next 5 years right now, over 60% of it is riding on that very small piece of information that I gave to you. The amount of investment that I've gone into that, sometimes I get very fearful. But there's absolutely no way I will have gotten that. Because we typically go and get into the science of sales in sales. We typically just focus on the end product, which is by the time I make that sales, then I've been vindicated of whatever it is that happened. And if I want to repeat it the next time and it happens this way, then I'm fine. So it's not a buzzword. I think it's something you must pay attention to. And I'll share this slide. There's a lot you can get into in there. I have some few surveys also that is coming from, I think, Boston Consulting, talking about how data can help you as an organization. That's the last part of it for me. I say, what do you do from here? Do a true reality check. Where are you precisely in your organization? Where are you precisely in your team? It doesn't matter whether you work for someone today. I joke with my colleague and I said, it's what you eat that you vomit. So if you get to my office today, it's very big. But my possession in that office is less than 4 to 5 things. So I can decide not to resume on Monday. I don't even have the pictures of my family in my office. Less than 5 things belongs to me in there. Then someone said, why? I said, because it's not what is in my office, it's what I've eaten. Because when I step out of that place and I get somewhere else and I say vomit, it's only what I've eaten that I will vomit. And I say we carry substance. So it really doesn't matter where we stay. When we get to the next place, we will vomit what we've eaten. My point in this also is like do a real reality check. What exactly are you, whether you work for an organization or you work for yourself? There's also this sentiment we have, especially for people that work for themselves. You know that God-given idea that God woke you up in the night and said, my son, this is what you should be doing. I would advise you go check it again and be sure, a reality check. I didn't say God didn't tell you, but maybe things have shifted also a little bit, and there probably must be a little bit of fine-tuning. So we get too emotional and sentimental sometimes when we believe so much that this is the way we should go. Relevant data seems not to be supporting that right now, but because of the emotional attachment, we're still very glued to it. There's an organization I work for, or I was in CWG, but I consulted for them for 10 years. And in 2012, the organization gave me well over $70 million. So at every time till now, I'm always forced trying to go back to that organization to find out what more can I get from there. And every time I get there, I get disappointed. So it took me a complete shift to understand that, yes, I had it good as at that time and it was good, but this thing is dead and you have to move on at this point. That's the reality check I did. So you must have that reality check also within yourself, whether within your team and the product line that you're selling or as an organization to check truly what's the actual, don't tell anyone, but you know that yourself. And that will also help you to be able to find what exactly are the missing elements within that ecosystem and how do you plug into that ecosystem. Most business line that we invest in today at CWG came from this reality check. I said, this business is good, $50 million. What is the profit line? It gave you $500,000 out of $50 million. It took 42% of my time. We do activity-based accounting, so I know where I spend all my time. I know what product or what region. I spend most of my time right now in Ghana because Ghana gives me more revenue right now than I get from Nigeria. So if you want to do how my salary is being distributed, Ghana will probably pay more right now. So then we realize over 60-70% of the time is going to this particular product because the revenue seems to be high, but the bottom line at the end of the day was a waste of everybody's time. So when I did the reality check, I said, shut it down. And everybody felt I was mad. I said, shut it down, because we need to take that energy somewhere else. It was a very tough decision. I wasn't sure at some point I knew what I was doing. But I couldn't go back. And I'm happy today we took that decision because we took over 40% of that energy now into something else. And I have people that I think are happy. I have more inclusive organization or people that just want to walk to me to say, no, I thought about what you said yesterday, can we do it this way? And that's the good news of that very single decision through that reality check that I did. Look inside how, check the ecosystem of what is possible, fill the gap. There definitely will be some gaps that you bring in, and you can truly fill the gap from that space. I'll leave you with that. Thank you so much for your time. My last comment on this is practice what they call the Dua movement. It's a theory also I got to know in one of my many engagements. How many of you came here today using the map? I used the map, and it was actually terrible getting here with the map. The map was confused at some point. So take the journey of your life also like the map, where you've set the destination of what you want to do. Because I can't tell you what will happen by tomorrow. So when you set the map, and as you're moving, you know the time where the map tells you could save 7 minutes if you take this particular place. You will still get to the same destination, but the map will advise that save 3 minutes by do you want to accept. So it's the same thing I do in business right now. I set my 5-year strategy, but I have it in mind that I've just locked, for example, CMS in that map. So as I move every day, I'm doing that check that would the map advise me to turn right or to turn left and save 5 minutes. So I'm not so focused about the 5 years and what I want to do. I'm focused about the reality at every point in time. And I'm having a pause, my finger right on the pause of that strategy to say, is this still relevant? And I'm not in any way emotionally attached to it. If I need to kill it at year 3, I kill it. So that's the dual way. The previous map we used to have those days, it doesn't have the intelligence to advise. Once you put in what you want, until you get there, There's the intelligence to tell you that you can go left or you can go right wasn't there. It's in the new technology that we have now. So that's the same way we're practicing. Another bad news I have, why everything I've said today might not work, is the fact that we're already configured to work in a particular way. We're already patterned to work in a particular way. It's extremely difficult for you to change at this point. It must be very, 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 very deliberate. There's an illustration I used to do where I talk about my wife and I tell them about when I got married to my wife, and I go on for like a 5-10 minutes. No, sorry, for like a 2-3 minutes. And I tell them about when I had my first son 10 years ago. And I'm still talking about my family, but while I'm talking on the screen, I have the picture of a boy that is like a 10-year-old boy. So I have the picture up in there. And by the time I'm through, I look at the screen and I say, who can tell me who that is? 10 out of 10 people in the room will tell me, oh, that's your son. Why? Because I started with my son, I started with my wife, I started with my family, then I went into my son, and there's a picture on the boy. The point in this is, even when the boy doesn't look like me, the way the brain also functions is like you make assumptions. So immediately you're looking at it, you say, okay, I've always said he has a very big hair. Can you see the boy also? He has a very big hair. And it will be making sense to you. Areas where you can't draw the line, you said, it's only the hair I can understand, but we don't know the wife. I'm sure the wife will have some kind of big eyeball. That's why this boy have it. You will draw the pattern yourself without anybody telling you anything. And you come to that conclusion that if they tell you to swear with your life, that is that my boy, you will say, yes, that is my boy. Plainly because of every other thing that I've said before then. Our brains see patterns. So it's extremely difficult for you to find an adult to change their ways. So every other thing I've said in here, you can as well press delete because it might not really change anything. It takes the very few that are deliberate. And that's why I said that when I talk to Mr. Bome, he's someone I have a lot of regard for because it's difficult to be consistent, extremely difficult. I started gym, it didn't work. I brought the gym home, it's still not working. I went back to the gym, that is because I don't have people around. That people encourage people when you see them. So I started 2, 3, 4 days. I think the last time I went was sometimes in March. I've not been there again now. You get? But there are some very few things you get that will make that a culture. That if we die, this is where we die. We are not going back. We are not going back. And those are the very few places that we think we've made very tangible effort by moving from step 1 to step 2, from step 2 to step 3. So that means we are starting at the -4. We are starting at a very disadvantaged position. So when you step out there also, every tendency is like you want to return back to those old ways, especially if it has profited you in the past. So to deliberately move away from that and now say, let me get into the science of sales, let me get into more of data insight, let me step back a little bit from everything that I've known, the same way I struggled May last year until I got that fresh information to say, no, release your toolbox, drop the backpack. This is fire. You need to save your life. So you can't hold on to those assumptions and patterns that you've built over the years that have gotten you to where you are today. Release it. And I had to let go of my backpack, which was my identity. I had to let go of the different tools, just like the firefighter. 14 of them died carrying the backpack. And they went 400 meters from the point of the fire to the place where they were found. Why didn't they think about it? It was the same decision I was making for my business last year. So right now, my backpack are off. And every conversation I'm taking now, I absorb that like I've never heard it before. And I'm thinking about it. What does this exactly mean? A gentleman said something to me about yesterday. We all left the place. I went back. I called my colleague that was there. I said, did you hear what he said? He said, what he said doesn't make sense. I said, I will explain to you later. When I explained to the gentleman, he didn't believe it. It doesn't make sense from where we are coming from because it doesn't fit into the pattern that we know. From where we are going through, this is a fresh information. We should go and find out how this is being done. We don't know. Let's admit we don't know. The trouble again is like if you have the assumption of success, you are in trouble because you already think you know how to do this thing. So when I was crossing the line of the 40, 50, 70, if you come to me and you say, that level of arrogance will come in to say, you don't know where we are coming from. The fundamentals have changed right now. If you tell me there's a way they package kuli kuli and they can sell online, we will together go and draw that strategy. It might not make sense to me before, but right now I'm in for fresh and new information. And I think if you do that also in your different business lines, I can assure you, you will have some very great things to record. I've taken more than my time. I apologize. I was just a little bit passionate about that. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adewale. Please let's put our hands together for him. All right.